Hello, guys, and welcome back to my channel. Hope you guys are doing well. I've been thinking about a topic that is quite interesting as far as gangstalking is concerned. Um, I think it's to do mainly with the lack of information that we as targets have as far as gangstalking is concerned. Clearly, something you notice with gangstalking is there is clearly obviously a huge lack of information as far as getting the facts straight. We don't know a lot of things about gang stalking. It is not made obvious to the public and especially to the target individuals. We are not given all the answers that we seek. Gang stalking in the mainstream media is not something that is talked about openly, and when it is not discussed seriously or is taken as a mental illness or paranoid delusions. It's not something that you can just openly talk about. It's definitely something that is meant to be kept secret and hush hush. So there's a huge lack of information. And of course, there is something I want to talk about, which is, you know, every time you go and you talk to, let's say you went and you talked to like 10 targeted individuals and you ask them, what do you think gang stalking is? Who is behind gang stalking and why is it being done? The answers you're going to get from those 10 people are very likely to be very, very divergent and very, very different. So one person's going to say it's reptilians and demons. One person's going to say it's spiritual and it has something to do with God and Jesus and the cross and all this kind of stuff. Some other person's going to look at you and they're going to say it's the demons and the jinn. Another person's going to say it's the Illuminati and the Freemasons. Another person's going to look at you and they're going to say, oh, it's the government. Some people are going to look at you and they say it's the CIA and the MI5. You talk to another person, they're going to say it's criminal groups and criminal gangs. Another person you talk to, they're going to say it's criminals and mafias working for the government. Guys, the fact that there is such a wide divergence and difference in opinions as to, or explanations, let's say, as to what gang stalking is proof that we do not have information. The information about gang stalking is not available. Whoever is doing this is clearly putting a lot of effort into hiding it. And this is obviously, let's say, if somebody's doing something shady or criminal, obviously they're going to try to hide their tracks and they're going to make sure that the information is not available especially to the people who are being targeted by this activity. Now, what can we infer? When we look, this is why I'm saying this is basically to the people that believe, 100% with absolute conviction that they know the answer. They know what it is. They know what gang stalking is. They know what it is. The answer to these people is, look at all this divergence and differences in opinions. Why is this happening? What can you infer logically from these differences in opinions? What you can actually infer from this logically, if you are being reasonable, is that the information is simply not there. It is not available. These are just people who don't have information. They don't have any facts. They are just trying to come up with explanations. This is what you call, in the realm of language, this is what you call conjecture. They are conjecturing. They are trying to come up with an explanation when they do not have the facts. This is called conjecture. When you don't know something, but you're trying to find an explanation for it, it's conjecture. Now, logically speaking, this conjecture can be true, as in, it can be like hit and miss. Like, for example, I can come up with a theory as to what it's like. Conjecture is like the lottery, basically. When I go and I play the lottery, I don't know what the winning numbers are, but I'm gonna try. Like I'm gonna put some numbers, some series of numbers. But just because I put this series of numbers without actually knowing what the numbers are does not necessarily mean that I'm not going to win the lottery. But it also doesn't mean that I am going to win the lottery. So there's always a chance that my conjecture is true, and there's a chance that it could be false. So, guys, just keep this in mind. Whenever we're talking about who is doing this and why it's being done, take it with a pinch of salt. Even the things that I am saying on my channel, when I talk about, I say, like in my first video, I said that it's the government, you know, even when I say that, I am just trying to follow what the evidence leads to, what the most rational and logical conclusion would be. I don't have the facts. I don't know 100 million% that it is the government. But to me, it sounds like the most logical conclusion to come up with, given, of course, the lack of evidence. This is, of course, very similar to. This is clearly very similar to, you know, when the job of a detective, basically. A crime happened. Obviously, whoever committed the crime doesn't want you or anyone or the detective to know who it was. And they're definitely going to do something to hide the facts. They're going to make sure there is no information. So the job of a detective is to go and to investigate the crime and figure out who it was. Of course, they don't have any facts, they don't have any information, but they're going to do their work, they're going to do their research, and hopefully they can come up with a bunch of suspects. It can be assumed, of course, that a bunch of those suspects are going to lie. They're not going to tell you the truth. And of course, that's the job of the investigator to figure out. It's basically the investigator's job to figure out who it was. So, anyway, guys, this is just to talk about, for just for all those people that say, "Oh, we know who is gang stalking, and we have it, the answer, and we have it. We have full conviction of who it is." Nah, the fact that all these targeted individuals have such a wide difference and divergence in opinions as to what gang stalking is, and the fact that they're arriving at such a hugely different amount of different types of conclusions, this is actually evidence that nobody really knows what gang stalking is or who is gang stalking, you know. And um, yeah, but of course we can study the evidence, what we have, the shreds of evidence, and we can look at it. We can come up with the best theory that we can come up with, the one that makes the most sense. I think that is much more reasonable. Now, the other thing was that I was looking at was yeah, the treatment of gang stalking in MSM in the mainstream media. Why is there such a lack of information about this? Why is this not fully disclosed to the public? Yeah, precisely because the people who are doing this do not want you to know. They are trying to hide all this information. But that just goes to reinforce what I just said, that people, I'm talking about target individuals, who are coming up with all these theories, don't actually know what gang stalking is or who is behind it. Now, I'm going to give you an example, I'm going to give you two examples, which are really, really interesting. Just about, how it works, how all of this lies and deceptions and the peoples who are interested in lying and deceiving others and keeping up lies, how it works. You know, there is in the Islamic religion, there is, of course, the Muslims believe in a book called the Quran. And of course, the Quran cannot be understood, all of it at least. You cannot understand all of the Quran if you read it by yourself. I know this sounds completely crazy, but that is a fact. So if any person, any layman just comes and reads the Quran, they're not going to be able to understand all of it. They might be able to understand 60% of it, 70% of it, but there's always going to be that 30 or 20% of it that just doesn't make sense, or they are not able to understand it. And for this reason, at some point, the Muslims decided to come up with something called tafsir. And tafsir means explanation or interpretation. The purpose of the tafsir or interpretation of the Quran is to interpret the Quran so that it is fully understood. So it's like you would read the tafsir alongside with the Quran, and then you would understand the Quran and all this kind of stuff. Now, when you are reading the tafsir, it is actually very interesting that at many different points in the tafsir, you will find that in reference to a verse, a full verse or a word, it will say, for example, the scholars are not in agreement, as in each scholar has presented a different opinion or has proposed a different tafsir or explanation for this word or this verse. Now, on the surface of it, this looks fine and dandy, but when you really think about it, it is quite problematic. Now, it's not. This is not me ragging on Muslims or attacking Islam. This is not a channel about Islam, guys. This channel is not about Islam. It is not about religion. I don't care about religion. This is not. Well, I mean, I do in my private life, but this is not what this channel is about. So don't get the message wrong. But what this is showing, is that these people who are trying to come up with an interpretation of the Quran and of these specific verses and words do not have the information. They do not actually know what that word means that they're trying to interpret. Because if they knew, well, there would be no disagreement between the scholars. Why are there multiple opinions between scholars? Sometimes you find 10 different opinions from scholars. Like they will say, for example, this scholar believes this means this. The second scholar believes it's something like this. The third scholar believes it's this. Like A, B, C, D, E. 10 different interpretations of the same fucking word. Which one is it? Exactly. So if there is such a wide divergence in the opinions of the scholars on this single word, this is proof and evidence that there is a lack of information. There is a problem. This is why there is this disagreement to begin with. Because if there was information, there would be no disagreement. For example, there are many verses in the Quran and many words in the Quran on which there is no disagreement. The scholars do not disagree. They are all in agreement. They all agree. There is a consensus. Everyone agrees. This word means this. End of story. So the question would be, logically, why is there a consensus for these words and why is there disagreement on the other words? Because those other words, which they disagree on, they don't have the information. They don't know what this word means. They are just trying to conjecture. They're trying to come up with explanations, but it's hit and miss. So it's like, it could be true, but it could also be false. Anyway, that was just an example that I said about the Quran to kind of, because this reminds me a lot of this situation with the gang stalking and how targeted individuals try to come up with all sorts of explanations about the gang stalking, but because there's such a lack of information and facts, we get such a huge difference of opinions, and one person is saying reptilians and jinns, and another person is saying government, and somebody else is criminals, and whatever. and everybody is convinced that their opinion is the real true one. Yeah. So with gang stalking, this is very much the case. The way that it is that whoever created this, let's say, gang stalking program, or whoever's behind it, has actually spent a lot of effort and time uh, into hiding um, as much information about it and keeping things hush hush. They have done a lot of things in order to make sure that there is no information about it, that is as little information about it as humanly possible. They are trying to hide the facts not only from the public, the people who are not involved, but also from the targeted individuals themselves. This is why, even though, as a target individual, you might go through gang stalking for 7, 8, 9, 10 years, but you still don't, you're just seeing the tip of the iceberg. Like, you don't know everything, you don't have all the facts. So, what can be done in the future? I think what can be done in the future? Well, we can in the future we can look at the gang stalking as almost like a puzzle that needs to be solved, but also like a detective who is trying to solve a crime. The picture, I think, the full picture is going to become clearer the more detective work we do. So the more investigation we do, the more we are going to figure out more facts about the gang stalking, because the facts are not publicly or easily or readily available. It's going to take a lot of work. It's going to take a lot of intelligence and thinking and problem solving for us to figure out every fact and detail about the gang stalking. And I think this is going to take time, obviously. You know, it's not easy. It's not something easy, because when you are trying to uncover a lie of this fucking magnitude, something that is being kept hush hush and uh, being hidden from the public, that's it's gonna be difficult to uncover the truth. And especially if there's a lot of effort that was that actually went into hiding, this kind of information from you specifically. So that's basically my message. Guys, if you think you know what gang stalking is, guys, you don't know. You know a tip of the iceberg. So when I talked in my first video, I think it's the government. I could be wrong. I don't have facts. I don't claim to have facts. I'm not an authority on gang stalking. I'm telling you that I have some arguments. I am proposing this theory that it's the government because, I see them using V2K and DEW and electronic harassment and microwave radiation. These things have actually been used on me. So I know for a fact that they're using this electronic harassment and this kind of technology, which, in my opinion, is very unlikely to be used by anyone other than the government. But I could be wrong, and anybody could be wrong. Anyway, guys, stay safe and hope you guys have a good night.